So we should be live on YouTube in a second. How are you feeling? Excited? I'm feeling grateful to have you here on this food talk show. Right, so I'm gonna start the live stream now on Instagram. So we should be live on YouTube in a second. Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the live talk show I'm going to be hosting with Chad Frischmann from Project Drawdown. It's his first time doing a live stream on Insta, so we're going to try to set him up to join us here. Right, where is he, Chad? Just a second.
I'm sorry, Charles, I am having a little bit of a technical problem to get onto the Instagram.
Chad, can you hear me? Chad, I think you're on your personal account, not on the Chat on Climate on Instagram. So you need to sign up with the other one. Or is that okay?
I can't hear you either. Hello?
Just a second.
Hi,
Hello,
Charles.
everyone. Bienvenidos. Hola, Alejandro. Qué bueno verte por ahí. Un abrazo bien apretado, compadre. Hello, Nat. Hey, I love you, Seth. Thank you so much for coming and say hi. Chad, how are you doing so you need to sign in to your Instagram with Chat on Climate.
Yes.
And then on top left on my profile, you click.
Voila.
Oh, Seth, I'll be back in LA as soon as flights are back. Well, not as soon as, but almost. Can't wait to see you again and seeing all the friends all over the world. But for now, it feels really good to be in nature, really good to be grounded, growing food, kind of a different lifestyle that I've been kind of used to in the past decade, basically, of not being rooted, of not having a physical home, let's say. And now kind of I'm really enjoying to be, I guess, living a bit more sustainably. And we owe that to, or thanks to the lockdown and the crisis. But yeah, many of us are reconsidering many things about our lifestyles, of how we live. And that's important because we are facing some of the most powerful times of change in our lives, and definitely during our lifetimes, but most likely also for the history of humankind, that we might be seeding ways of being on this planet that will last for a very long time. But this is the moment where we establish new ways of being with the planet and with one another. Welcome, everybody. I see so many friends. Hola, Linda, Amarna, qué bonito verte por acá. Y bueno, entonces vamos a ver cómo. All right, just a second. That Chad is trying to join here. Okay, ya casi. Just in a little bit, we'll have Chad on with us. Bienvenidos a todos los latinoamericanos. Y bueno, hoy es en inglés, pero bueno, ahí les recomiendo que estudien el inglés porque es el idioma internacional de una manera, ¿no? Importante saberlo decriptar. Pero bueno, también hago por ahí eventos en español y tenemos tiempo de hablar solamente en español. Pero muchas gracias a todos por estar ahí. All right. Veamos a ver. Chat on Climate. Add. Hola a todos. Bienvenidos. Bienvenidos. Ya está llegando Chad. There we go. Magic of technology. When it works, it's great. So nice to see you, brother. Yeah, no, it's amazing. You've been a great inspiration. So one little thing, please unmute yourself on the Zoom. So that way YouTube has your sound as well. But just turn down the volume, like mute your computer, but don't mute yourself on Zoom. That's what we need to do. Yeah.
Unmute myself. Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, that's both. Perfect.
Wonderful.
That's perfect.
Wonderful.
That's amazing.
This is my first live Instagram feed, and I'm very, very excited to be here. So excuse me to your audience who has been waiting patiently for me to join, but this is my first time, but I love it. This is one of our solutions that we often talk about for the planet is telepresence. Now we're here today,
telepresence,
transmitting our thoughts and discussions and vibes
at
across
the speed of light.
The speed of light. I'm in California. In Charles, where are you these days?
Yeah, I'm in Bordeaux, outside of Bordeaux, in the countryside in France.
Perfect.
And it almost feels like we're next door.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So Chad, it's really a pleasure to have you here. It's I think you're my fourth guest on the Food Talk Show, and I want to invite people who are inspiring, who have been friends and kind of that I've been lucky to kind of travel the world and see conferences and meet with incredible communities all over of people who are trying to do good for the planet, trying to do good for people. And you're one of those inspiring humans that I came across in the past years. And it's such a pleasure to be sharing your story with the audience and to hear from you today and for the solutions that you're coming up with, uniting science, uniting ideas on policy making, ideas on systems theories and system design, and to try and solve the complex problems of our world. So that's kind of my brief little intro. But yeah, so let's start where we met. We met at Planet Home in last year in San Francisco. Right, that was our first time. Yeah, and you were like, I kind of know you. I think I've seen you somewhere.
Yeah, I couldn't quite place where it was. I had gone to this great conference put on by the the MAD Symposium. MAD means food in Danish, and a congregation of chefs and wonderful people from all over the world in the food industry and working on this and really trying to challenge ideas. And I thought I had seen you there. But then you said no. I hadn't seen you there. I saw you somewhere else. But I knew you were a chef, so I gotta try to connect it all together.
Somewhere.
But I also feel, Charles, I think we actually probably met spiritually at Oxford. Because I think we were overlapping and maybe a little bit at that time and doing very similar types of stuff.
Yeah, with completely different fields, which I found totally that to be very interesting because same intentions, the same kind of life missions and purpose, but with I was doing experimental psychology. What were you doing at Oxford?
16th century art history. Seriously, history. I'm a historian by background. I was doing the history of propaganda and institution building, creation of the early modern state, all this wonderful stuff. But it was very much about perception and how art and material culture create perceptions. Stories,
narratives. Yeah, absolutely. How powerful. Yeah. Good. And so we meet at Planet Home. It was an incredible congregation. Actually, some of our friends were the architects behind it, who was a conference. I'd say it's not a conference. It was an experience around solutions for the climate crisis, solutions for planetary problems. And there were incredible speakers and personalities from music world, from experienced designers, technologists, trying to come, artists, lots of artists, everybody talking about climate. And that is where we connected, right? With our intention to try and put our craft and ideas and mind and hearts to solve probably one of the greatest crises that has ever happened in this planet, apart from a meteorite that happened a few million years ago. But apart from that meteorite, maybe now the biggest existential risks is humans.
I mean, but you know what's really interesting? What's really well, sad about that is that the dinosaurs didn't do it. They didn't call that meteorite to come down, did they? No. But this is actually a crisis of our own making. We as a species are creating the crisis that we're facing. And it is the greatest crisis humanity has ever faced. And it is our long history here. And it's affecting us today. And that's what's crazy about this whole situation is it's not some future thing that's going to be coming down the line. It's affecting us today, our children tomorrow, and future generations to come. And as I say, a lot that, today, the decisions we make, perhaps more than any other time in human history, actually have real meaning. And they have meaning because what we make to say today has impact for so many other generations to come. And that's never been the case before.
Yeah. Like we are the generation, like you and I, are you still a millennial? Do you qualify as a millennial?
No, I just skipped that. I'm a little too old for that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is why I couldn't get onto Instagram very well.
You're a hipster. No, you couldn't get on Instagram. That's definitely not a millennial.
Yeah.
But back to serious. We are the generations who are witnessing the first planetary uses of the internet, right? Like we figured out a way to exchange information and even resources now through blockchain, right? We're able to manage resources and information almost at the speed of light all over the planet. And that has brought an awakening that is going to be here for a very long time. And we are the architects of the first decades, right? Whether our role is just to be an attention consumer through like having an Instagram account and liking things, we're part of the system that is going to be right now, like who knows running in which direction. But I really like what you're saying. So let's talk about, there's so many things that I would love to talk about with you. We've already talked about a lot of things, but that I want the audience to understand. And one in particular is carbon. Let's talk about carbon. Because we tend to think, right, it's kind of, carbon is bad. But right now we're breathing and we're producing carbon as we breathe, right? So it's life. It's
life itself. If you turn around just real quickly, Charles, and look what's behind you. That's all carbon. That's all carbon right there. Put your hand in front of you, right? This is carbon. We are carbon. The plants, the trees, everything around us is carbon. Carbon is life. And it's not that we shouldn't be demonizing this because it is essential to life. But what we have done as a species is we've taken carbon that's been and other types of fossil fuels that's been very deep inside our Earth's terrestrial underneath the Earth and put it out into the atmosphere where it doesn't really belong. And so what we need to do is actually restore what's called the carbon cycle so that we can reduce that amount of carbon that we as a species have put into the atmosphere and restore it to good purposes, to sustain life, to produce more for us. And it's really possible to do. So carbon is not something we should be demonizing. We don't need to decarbonize our economy. We need to recarbonize. We need to get it out of the atmosphere and back to where it belongs, which is in our terrestrial systems, to give life, to continue to life and continue to do that. So that's what we need to be doing. We need to be recarbonizing, not decarbonizing.
That's amazing. I would almost say it's a dangerous idea. It's a powerful idea. Like we're talking about this. And it's funny that you mentioned, I had no idea that you studied history, and in particular history of propaganda. So it's almost like the way we convey these narratives to the world and the way we're talking, even in media, even in public policy, even in art, we're talking about carbon. And it's like reduce carbon, is this kind of negative, when really carbon is the building block of life. We have too much of it in the atmosphere. We need to bring it down in the form of life and make life more beautiful on this plane, right? By just having more green. In a way, right? Bring back all the forests that we have lost. What's the percentage of that? I think it's a crazy percentage that we lost.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Like we've lost a tremendous amount of forest.
More than half of forests have
more than half of them. That's primary forest has disappeared, but we're also losing a tremendous amount of degraded land, and it's mainly due to conversion to agricultural purposes, clear cutting for our consumption, and that's how we're destroying our forests today. And when we destroy our forests, we destroy biodiversity. We destroy so many other things, that the challenges that we are often quite familiar with. Biodiversity loss, for example, is a product of the destruction and deterioration, the degradation of our ecosystems across the board, which is again just part of our. So not only are we, degrading ecosystems and contributing to carbon entering to the atmosphere and creating this imbalance in our carbon cycle, but we're also deteriorating and degrading biodiversity. This is our extinction crisis that we're in, right? I mean, these are parallel activities that are that only that have essentially the parallel activities that are causing multiple challenges that come along when we do these sort of activities. And when we do the opposite by protecting our ecosystems or restoring our ecosystems, we actually create more resiliency. We create we improve and help to protect biodiversity and increase the potential for biodiversity to come thrive and come back, and we avoid some of those extinctions. Now, we're not going to avoid them all. We're already is built into the system because there already is climate change. There's already extinctions that are happening today and will continue to happen. So we can't turn back the clock. And that's really important to remember here, is that we can't restore back to some past idyllic time. But what we can do is envision the future that we want, right? So stop thinking about like going back to something in the past that's not going to ever be able to be achieved. But we can think about, what do we want that future to look like? A thriving planet where we as a species interact with nature, so that our economies are deeply intertwined with nature, but in a regenerative way, where biodiversity is thriving, where we're surrounded by greenery, where our forests are restored, our ecosystems are restored. We want to envision what that future looks like and work towards that, and not try to recreate something of the past.
Because so one thing that I want to lift up from what you just shared is the narrative again, because we tend to think, okay, yes, sounds very nice, but how do we get there, right? It's really complex. Like, it sounds easy to say, but if we don't have a narrative that we can agree on in the first place, well, let's not even talk about how we're going to do it, right? What are we doing in the first place, right? What are we doing? And this is where you bring, I think, one of the greatest ideas that I feel I'm a part of it, right? And I it's this idea of regeneration, and even the regeneration, with a capital G and a capital R, right? Which is really to regenerate, right? I do feel that we have, as humans, evolved with a certain intelligence and hence a responsibility to be the keepers and the shepherds of this earth, in a way that we become, not get shepherd sounds like misplaced, more like the architects, in a way, like we have the technology to become the architects of this planet. How do we want to see it? What does it look like? Under which economic system, right? So tell us about that.
Well, I think architect's a good word. And I think to a certain extent, we have to think of ourselves as both architects, sure, but also stewards, right? So it's about how, stewardship, and this idea of, caring for and taking a responsibility for the planet that we occupy. And it's about responsibility and accountability. We have to be accountable to that, and to life itself. And so we have to both be an architect or designer, right, to envision what that future is. As a starting point, we need to reimagine what that looks like and become enchanted with that future. We need to have that sense of enchantment, right, in the imagination. It's not just like, envisioning what that looks like. That's great. We can do that, and we can talk more about that and what is the composition of that in terms of what are the solutions that actually get us there. We can talk about that for sure, but we need to actually feel it, right? You have to feel that excitement of what is possible, right? And that's, I think, how we can get there. It's a starting point, and that possibility is sort of like, then how do we design and create the structures there to move in that direction as urgently and safely and equitably as possible, right? And also be very careful that we are not over designing, that we are working with nature. We are adaptive. We are iterative. We're agile. We're able to move and adapt with the system because, we're a part of an ecosystem. We should be thinking about the way we design that future like we think about ecosystems themselves. Adaptable, resilient, interacting. Diverse. They are systems, diversity, and see that strength and that resilience of that future and move in that direction. There's not going to be any silver bullet, right? We can't design the one thing that's going to get us there, or the 10 things that are going to get us there. There's going to be a patchwork, a tapestry of different things woven together, and that are going to be that picture. Is the tapestry really? Really, that's that tapestry.
That's beautiful. I love the metaphors.
Yeah, and it all is all
it's
connected.
about weaving
so whether you're
as well. It's about interconnectedness of all these things, right? So the metaphor of the tapestry is really beautiful to imagine, because every single thread is a solution that will not hold anything unless it is intertwined with all the other solutions.
Absolutely.
And hopefully with a good narrative creates a beautiful pattern in the tapestry.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. So bringing it back to the beginning, like we talked about forests and disappearing forests, and to how we should bring more life into on the surface of the planet from the carbon that is in the air, in the atmosphere. And you mentioned something, right? Like the reason why we've deforested and desertified so much of the land surface of the planet is actually because because of our food system, right? And this is where also we connect very deeply. Food, right? So tell us about the food system and why it is inviolable in some of the ways it is operating today, kind of in terms of carbon footprint of waste, let's say. So how do you see it? Yeah.
Well, see, the thing about food is we all love it. We all want it. We all need it. We enjoy it. It's one of the great pleasures that every individual, it's the unifying thing amongst all people, right? I mean, whether you're living in a community in India, or your community in Europe, or a community in Argentina, or in California, wherever you are in the world, the thing that's going to unite you is food. So of course it's such an important part of our everyday thing, and something we consume. If we're lucky, actually, we consume 3 times a day, right? We consume every day. Sadly, 800 million people in the world are still going hungry today, which is a travesty. When we think about how much food is lost and wasted, about 30 to 40% of all food that we produce is not consumed. It is lost or wasted across the supply chain. And it's astounding to think that there are simple solutions to solve this across the supply chain, from production through to consumption, that can reduce that loss, that can then be redirected to this hungry population. So it is something, though, that really does unify every person. But if we think about the supply chain, so we talk about supply chain, we have production, how we produce food, how we grow crops, how we manage livestock. We have to harvest and process that food. We package it, we transport it all over, we keep it cool, and so on. So we walk through that supply chain. There are impacts that go just beyond not only just food loss and waste, but there's energy consumed, there's labor, there's materials, there's fossil fuels being combusted across the entire supply chain, and being through production, whether that's tilling the soil and releasing that soil organic carbon into the atmosphere, or converting forests into cropland or pasture land to produce food. There's losses and energy and emissions consumed in the harvesting and the processing. Think about every drop of oil or every crust of bread that goes through that system. You have to produce that food. Yes, it goes to the harvesting, and then goes through a processing. And then you have all the factories that are churning out emissions to produce tin, glass, plastic, paper, cardboard, which we wrap our food in to put on a truck, to put on a boat, and sadly, too often, on a plane for luxury commodities to be flown all over the world in order for us to be then put into a grocery store, where all the while it is refrigerated or frozen to kept cool and fresh, and that just uses energy and uses refrigerants, which are more hydrofluorocarbons, for example, that are used as refrigerants. And it's not only
atmosphere, right? It's water, it's energetic resources, it's like all the rest, the
whole thing.
Yeah. And all this to get to a point where the UN says that 30% of the food that is produced on Earth goes to waste. Yeah. So one out of 3 times that all this happens, and we move things from all the world,
Everything.
it goes to waste. 1/3. It's absolutely nuts.
It's insane. Think about going to the store and grabbing 3 big bags of food and all the packaging, everything, driving it home, and then taking one whole bag, glass, plastic, paper, everything, and throwing it in the trash.
That's what we're
just
doing
imagine that.
As a collective.
How silly that is. It's perhaps one of the dumbest things that the species has ever done. Yeah. You know, we're a brilliant species. Humanity is absolutely brilliant, but we can be so dumb at times. And this is one of the dumbest things we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have that issue. Now, what are the solutions, right? So a little kind of background I want to give for the audience is there is a project that Chad has been working on called Project Drawdown, which is arguably one of the world's best resources and most kind of accurate resources when it comes to understanding the best solutions to slow down climate change. And it's not only about climate, right? The solutions that you talk about are also about education, about social issues. They touch on many layers, right, of the fabric of civilization. So tell us about Drawdown, your work with it, like the research and kind of what are the insights, top solutions.
Sure. So Drawdown, what that means, it's that point in time when atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases begins to decline on a year-to-year basis. Now, concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere create the global warming effect that we're experiencing, and is only going to have continued warming over a period of time if we don't do anything about it. If you just amass all these greenhouse gases, and it just has this global warming effect, and there's all these terrible consequences throughout our entire system, to our ecosystems, biodiversity, human systems are all affected by this. But the only way we know how to stop this and to begin to reverse this process of global warming is to draw down, to stop putting fossil fuels into the atmosphere and to pull down what's already there. And together, these things, by stopping and then beginning to pull down, can have this effect of turning that and reducing atmospheric concentrations. And when that happens, we can stop global warming and begin to reverse it. We can affect global cooling. There's about a 10 to 15 year lag time. So we can start to be
in a cool planet, right? In a cooling planet.
Absolutely. It's a cool planet, right? I mean, and we don't know what that balance is going to be. We don't know where we should be or what but we know that what we need for that future that we want is we need to stop global warming and begin to reverse it. And that's what Drawdown does. And so what we do at Project Drawdown is we identify the most substantive technologies and practices that, when taken together as a system of solutions, all being implemented in parallel, can achieve that point in time of drawdown and begin to create that future that we want. And I would say, Charles, that this is a prerequisite for us to achieve a regenerative system. But the cool thing about it is when you think about all these solutions, all these different technologies and different practices woven together as a tapestry, you can kind of, actually, I don't know if you can see back here behind me, that little poster there. Yeah. That's my periodic table of solutions. It's my tapestry of solutions right there. But when you weave that tapestry together, you not only get to solve the climate crisis, but you start ourselves on this pathway to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and indeed starting to create the regenerative future that we want. And the reason why is because all of these solutions not only affect climate, but like I mentioned about forest protection and restoration, they also help and address a cascading series of benefits that affect biodiversity, human rights and well-being, that affect access to energy,
ocean life,
health, ocean life, biodiversity, everything that we touch upon. All human activity can be addressed when we solve for the system of solutions that we want.
And so this is where I bring this point, which I find to be fundamental, especially in today's world, as in today, like what's been happening in the past weeks and months. there is no environmental justice without having social justice integrated, as they go hand in hand and at the same speed. I would almost dare to say, right? So and I read from the Drawdown. I would love to hear from you, like in general, what's the connection between environmental justice and social justice? But the point of especially the role of education and access, not only access to information, but access to healthy food, for instance. How does that work within the solutions and the tapestry that you're kind of mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an important point. There's often folks have this distinction between social justice issues, environmental justice issues, health justice. I mean, there's so many different groupings or categories of justice, and frankly, it's just justice, right? It's about justice, right? And about basic human rights, basic decency and well-being for all people, right? And so I think when we think about this drawdown, and really this is about how drawdown and solving the climate crisis can be a pathway to achieve a regenerative system, a regenerative society, and an economy, is we need to weave in through this tapestry, through every one of these solutions, weave in social justice and equity throughout the entire tapestry of these solutions. Because you cannot have climate justice, environmental justice without social justice, without racial justice, without justice for different genders. And across the board, we need to be addressing this and need to be addressing the needs of communities at scale, because these ultimately, what we are is a community of different communities, right? That is what we are as a species. And when we talk about these global systems, they're completely meaningless without individual agency and the connection of local communities taking action. So it has to be woven into all of these solutions. And that's what we try to show at Drawdown as best that we can. But you asked us about education, and education, it's one of these interesting solutions because not only does providing equal quality and access to universal education provide increased uptake of solutions, right? It helps the uptake of all of these climate solutions.
Transversal to all problems, all solutions, yeah.
Exactly. I just wrote this, we just did this great paper linking drawdown solutions to the Sustainable Development Goals. And what we found was that, and what is interesting with even the Sustainable Development Goals is that the education, like improving access to education, affects everything else. All the other SDGs, all the climate solutions, all the solutions themselves, access to education.
Yeah.
But I would say also what it does do in a very concrete terms is access to education for equal quality and access to 12 to 13 years of schooling for boys and girls, which is a great disparity in that in different parts of the world. Equal quality of access increases the uptake of family planning, voluntary reproductive health care, access to contraceptions, and freedom of choosing you're making your own choices for your own body, your own family, devoid of persecution. When you increase education, you increase family planning. And what that actually does is particularly empower women who has a great gender disparity in the educational systems and in access to family planning. You empower them, you create autonomy and dignity provided to women, but also boys and girls. But what that has the effect of doing is delayed onset of marriage, smaller family size, improved livelihood outcomes and well-being outcomes. And then ultimately that smaller family size reduces the estimated future population, right? So the United Nations estimates there's about between two different kinds of population variants, mainly a function of family planning uptake, is about 1 billion more people on the planet than we would otherwise be expecting. So by providing access to education and by providing family planning resources, we can reduce that population estimation.
Yeah. So that makes absolute sense, that education is central, transversal, and that it can really kind of accelerate how we adopt some of these sustainable development goals. But I have actually a question here. Antototsi asked on the chat, how can we improve education on food if there are some people that can't afford it, right? So there's this idea of access to food. So what is your answer to that question? I'm curious, because I have a way to answer that question, but I know it's not an easy one, right?
It's not an easy one, and it's an extremely hard question, and to no small measure, I can't answer it. So it's not something that I feel I personally can answer, and because I think it's so contextually specific. And what I mean by that, they're like access to healthy food for a variety of reasons. It's something that's addressed at very local scales, and there's different factors that come to play there in different parts of the world.
Narratives and different solutions, different responses to this question, depending on where you're at, right? When you're at in the world, there's no universal answer.
Exactly. There's no universal answer for this, and it's really what it takes is, I think the unifying thread is providing open and transparent access to information, but in a useful and meaningful way. And this goes back to some of the work that I was doing as a historian and as other thinking is, how do we transform information into knowledge and knowledge into wisdom, right? How do we make that pathway very clear for people so we can accessible information? I think right now in this internet age, we're in these there's kind of like there's two types of oppression. One is an overabundance of information, and one is a paucity or a lack of information. And right now, I think we're in overabundance. So how do we translate that information into knowledge and make that as accessible to people at all scales? And I think that's at least one step forward in that direction. But of course, there are many other issues at different, locations, different places that define how access to food and healthy food is possible.
I want to try to give, and I love your answer. I want to try to give a different kind of perspective also on the question, which is, something that is at heart for us, for me as a food educator, right? And for you as well, as we talked about in other conversations, the importance of educating around food waste, the importance of educating around eating less animal products, right? This is all come from education. So there's one part of the question. So I repeat the question: how can we improve education on food if there are some people that can't afford it? There's one disempowering answer to that question, which is, well, we need to do it through policymaking. We need to do it through creating new businesses and new business models for educational systems, right? It's disempowering, and that may be part of the solution, right? The work that the politicians we elect do on a local level and on a very local level. It's not only about presidents; it's on a local level, and that to put that on the agenda of these people that actually care. They care, but maybe they have other priorities. This must be a priority. Education must be a priority. So there's that. There's of course the innovation and entrepreneurship that can create new solutions and new models for education, right? But I find that it's still disempowering, and I want to share something that is about, an empowered way of seeing this is education. This right now could be education. Education can be present at all levels of human experience every day, right? From the things that you buy, of course, at the supermarket, but also the way you talk and what you talk about with your friends, the intergenerational exchange, right? Ask your elders, ask your children, right? What do you think about this exchange? Create education. Let's live and breathe more education. Let's live as eternal students, right? And that is empowering, in my opinion, because it is about your decision right now. Whoever's watching, there's 83 people connected right now. Like, you're watching this live, like I'm talking to you. Every single one of us can see education as something that is present on us every second, every minute, every hour of our lives. And let's be eternal students, and let's learn and share knowledge, right? And I think that is there's something there that together with also demanding, from power to act on these things, but with in a way that is inspiring, bringing solutions. Like, hey, I have this idea. Why not help me? Instead of just being like, hey, why don't you do anything about it? Right? Because then we just stay in the same conversation of not actually activating solutions. because we are all solutionists. Everybody has a role to play in the way we consume, in the way we speak, what we talk, what we post on Instagram, what we say, everything, and the way we do our jobs is all a part. So we're all actors in this. It's not some kind of out there problem, right? It's how you decide to live on a daily basis. Anyways, that's my rant.
You're 100% on point. The way we have to look at the transformation of the system, right? I'm not really talking about breaking down the system and disrupting it and just trashing it and building a new. That's never happened in history and probably won't happen. But how do we change the system by really looking towards that future? So I mentioned that before. But the point is like everybody has a level of agency or decision making that we can take part in. So we need not just look at the top down. So you mentioned policymakers, top down regulations. Yes, that's incredibly important. They have a tremendous amount of power. They impact systems, sure. But so it's not just top down, but it's also bottom up. We have individual actions that we take every single day as we go through life that we can change the way we do business. And that's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough for everybody. But we need the top down and the bottom up together. But I think also, Charles, we need the middle out, the institutional change. This is the corporations, where the communities, the corporations, the investors, the financial systems, the educational systems themselves, the health systems need to change and need to take on these. They have agency as we move from the individual decision making to the we as a group. And that's what I mean by middle out. I think it's really important that we address this top down, middle out, and bottom up. And the other thing I wanted to say is a lot of it, the education is how we actually communicate about these solutions. So I'll give you a little example. I was having this discussion recently and about food systems, and someone said, oh, I don't think any environmentalist is a true environmentalist unless if they eat meat. And I said, okay. And then I said, okay, well, you have to be a vegetarian, and this is what you need to do. And if you don't do this, the vegetarian is this, vegetarian. I said, look, first of all, like what we talk about at Drawdown is not a vegetarian or vegan diet, though I applaud anybody who makes those decisions. So it's about a healthy diet, about reducing your meat consumption, because there are some benefits in livestock management and so on. But the point is, it's like, okay, well, a healthy diet. But what's more important than when we communicate the solution is not to point fingers and blame and shame and to say you've got to do this or you have to be this. Instead, we need to say things like this. This is what I told in response. I said, well, I love vegetarian food. Actually, I had this great recipe that I just made. This beautiful Thai noodle salad that I got. I got these organic peanut butter from the store, and then I mixed it with organic almond butter as well. It was delicious. And then I got the sesame oil. But then I realized I need to get these noodles from this place I love down in Chinatown. So I got on my mass transit, got off my the metro, and jumped onto that rideshare. Isn't it cool? I said that the cities are providing these bicycles that we can just ride the rest of our distance as soon as we get off public transit. That's amazing. So I went to this great place. This guy who makes his handmade noodles, picked up some noodles, and I picked up some sesame oil that he was saying, delicious. So then I went back using the rideshare bike and got home and made this delicious thing. It was so good. I'm giving you a quick version of this, but the point I wanted to make to the guy is, it's not about saying you have to be vegetarian. Let's not say that. Let's say, here is this delicious vegetarian recipe that I just made. It
don't even use the word vegetarian. Just say this delicious noodle, right?
Well, exactly. Actually, it's actually, you're totally right. And actually, I didn't even use the word vegetarian. I just said I made this delicious thing, and these were all the ingredients in it. I didn't even use it. Yeah, but also I talked about using other solutions, using mass transit, using ride sharing, using bicycles. When you start to paint that picture, it becomes an adventure. It becomes
possible too. It becomes delicious, right?
Exactly.
We are driven by pleasure, all right? Yeah. And as you were saying earlier with your research on history and kind of all this, there's something about perception, right? If we perceive the change to be more exciting, cooler, than what's here, that's how we need to do. And this is actually very close to we did a research paper that never got published because we ran out of time, never had time to do it. But we did some research, and the results were really interesting. That we put the same food, supposedly kind of having insects in it, and we changed the narrative of the three different foods. One narrative was, this is really healthy for you, and we told people 4 arguments of why this is really healthy for you and you should have it. The other one, the same food, but we changed the arguments. We put 4 environmental arguments. The other one, we control condition, and the last one, we gave 4 arguments on why other people are consuming this. And of course, the one that was about other people are doing this and they're liking it was the one that not only increased the chances statistically of people integrating, or people reporting that they would consider integrating this food into their diet, but it actually increased how sweet they perceived the food to be.
Wow,
and
that's
sweetness perception is what we want, because it's pleasure, right? So we need to create these more delicious narratives, right? So and delicious there's another question that was actually on the chat. Someone asked, should we all become vegan, right? Is that, maybe that's not the solution. The solution is maybe not polarizing anymore around something that is supposed to unite us, which is food. Let's connect on what we love and what is delicious, and go beyond the labeling, right? Because also there's shame labeling in a way, right? Oh, you're not vegan. You're not a true environmentalist, right? And some folks don't have access to nutritious vegan food because it's a privilege to eat a full, complete vegan diet. So beware, if you're saying, like, and you're advocating for veganism, like, you might be excluding some folks that don't have access to those foods. So that's not the narrative we need. We need a better narrative when it comes to diets, right? And I say this knowing also that, so on the new version of Drawdown, right, some of the top 5 solutions are around eating less animals, right? One of them, is it the number 1 or number 3, or I think it's number 3, right?
It's the plant-rich diets is the number
I think it's 3.
2, I think.
2?
See, I can't. Yeah, I don't. The funny thing is, Charles, I never really remember. Well, I do remember, but I never really pay much attention to the rankings of the different order, because they're always going to change.
Yeah, and I pay attention to that, and kind of I use it in my talks, but I think it's that reducing food waste and eating more plant-based diets is kind of number 1 and number 3 or something like that. So we're talking about some of the best solutions to draw down carbon from the atmosphere are actually to evolve the way we eat, right? And that is, I think, a powerful insight. So I'm curious to see what we'll co-create when it comes to the future in terms of narratives, because I'm a food technician, right? You're a systems thinker. And so how can we collaborate with who's the third person, who's the third party, where we can eventually co-create these narratives? And this is where the idea of community comes in, right? And this it's a movement. It's not about you and me. It's not about our single voices and ideas. It's about how we weave them together. So the regeneration.
Exactly. It's the regeneration. There's no more generation. This is the with a capital R and a capital G. There's no more generation X, Y, Z, right? Where do we go after generation Z, right? There's only one, the regeneration. We need to be an intergenerational movement coming together, linking arms, whether you're 10 years old or you're 70 years old, right? We need to link arms together to create this regenerative future that we want. And we're all in it together. And this is why the decisions that we make today have meaning for all future generations, because we are the regeneration, right? And we this is our opportunity. This is our chance.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, we're arriving to the end of the live, and first of all, I wanted to express gratitude to you, Chad, for giving an hour to share these ideas, and I want also to express gratitude for everybody here who's been connected and almost an hour with us. And it really, we're doing this for you, and it's really important for us that you're here. Thank you so much for for following, for commenting, for sending like lots of love and good ideas. And I see so many good friends there and incredible names. But really, I guess the message is it's about what we do today. It's about how we speak about it in the future. It's about how we imagine it to be in 100 years from now. It's all of it, right? And it's about justice. I really loved what you said earlier. I don't know, you want to share a last kind of idea, thought, something that people can take away?
Just one thing. Let's reimagine what the future we actually want is, and then become enchanted with it. Let's figure out a way to be enchanted, to get that sense of possibility and magic that we can make this thing happen, because we can. There are existing solutions that already are happening right here today, and taking these existing things that we already know work, taken together, can achieve it. So let's become enchanted with it, and let's make this happen together.
Let's imagine the most exciting future possibility and pull the present to meet that future that we want.
Yeah.
Amazing. Enchantment. Thank you so much, Chad. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, so much love here. People are really sending. And gracias a todos también los que hablan en español, que nos oyeron hablar en inglés. Los quiero mucho a todos latinoamericanos. Y sí, we're going to make the live available. I'm going to put it on my EGTV. It's also on my YouTube channel. So go check it out. Thank you all for being present and for putting your mind and hearts to this mission, collective mission that we have as a species. Thank you, Chad, and looking forward to more of this.
Virtual hug.
Yeah, and
everybody.
Follow Chad on
Hugs
climate.
To everybody else who's listening,
socially
big
distance,
virtual hug.
Bye. So much love.
Bye.
This.
Virtual hugging. Virtual hug.
Yeah. Follow Chad. Follow Chad. Chad on climate. Hello, Chad. You still there?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Charles.
Hi. That was fun. Thank you so much.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was super meaningful, and I loved just seeing different aspects of your mind that I hadn't seen before. We should do this more often. We should. I guess the point on education was, if we make education more pervasive and every single part of our lives to be educational, and we all become students and educators at the same time, things can shift.
We should do one of those YouTube shows, Chad and Charles on climate and food or something. Chad and Charles. Yeah. One of the folks who were on the Instagram feed said something like double C for caring community, Chad and Charles, double C.
Oh, nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make this available on Instagram. It's also going to be on YouTube recorded.
Super.
And yeah, I know that you have a meeting now. So, but yeah, let's keep on talking and weaving the regeneration.
Sure. And, Charles, if you want to have another session later on with your supporters or whatnot, and a more deeper dive, happy to do that. Just let's figure out a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We'll do it again. Let's find maybe a more specific title, right? What could be the more specific title? Like diet. I think people really interested in that. So what's a drawdown diet? What does it look like?
Yeah.
Although that's a bit tricky also, but we could talk about more on food systems, or let's figure out what exactly.
But this was fun though. This is a fun hodgepodge of different ideas and
or food education would be also.
Pardon?
Food education as a topic. Anyways, thank you so much. I'll let you go.
Thanks, Charles. Okay.
Be
well all. Bye-bye.